Hey everyone, this is Lenny here. So it's been a few months since I've launched the channel, and I have never really introduced myself or my credentials. So I've been reviewing films for 10 years now. First on morning television in Lima, Ohio with a partner, shout out to Dr. Dave Adams, then on my own once the COVID pandemic hit. I enjoyed doing those reviews, but I felt constrained by the time crunch. To try and explain away a movie in a 3-minute bubble didn't always work. Plus I wasn't cool over the fact that some viewers got pissy over simple language like me saying hell on camera. So I went to strike out on my own here on YouTube, but when I just got started, my entire life got uprooted. I run film festivals and hosted movie seminars. I even made a no-budget feature film, but the less we talk about that, the better. Now that the dust in my life is settling, I figured it would make sense to give an idea of why I'm here. I love movies. That much is obvious. But I, like anyone else, have my own biases, or preferences, or styles that I gravitate to. Some are addicted to rom-coms, some are addicted to horror, some gravitate to a specific filmmaker or a particular franchise. For me, I have 5 essential films. These are the first 5 movies I remember vividly watching as a child, and these are the first cinematic images I soaked up that shaped what style of movies I enjoy, what genres I gravitate to, and even what decade I consider to be my favorite in all of film. Without these movies, I wouldn't exist. Do any of these films fall in your essential 5?
Roper, Williams, and Lee, the Deadly Three, penetrate the secret chambers of an evil island empire.
What do you know about Han? He lives like a king on that island, totally self-sufficient.
A fortress without walls, protected by an invincible army that needs no ordinary weapons. This is Enter the Dragon.
So clearly I've been brain damaged from the jump because as a child, I hated going to Jamaica where my family is from. So much so that when I was 5, I tried to call a cab to take me to the airport. Now, I was thwarted by my family and I was taken back to my uncle's house in Jamaica to spend out the rest of my vacation. What a tragedy. But if my attempts to escape the dankiest, swankiest island on planet Earth were successful, I would not have caught a glimpse of this all-time actioner. My dad and my uncle sat me down and I was introduced to my first superhero. And he was a real person. Bruce Lee was doing shit that I as a child just found unfathomable. It wasn't just sleep. This movie introduced me to Jim Kelly, and seeing someone who looked like my dad and my uncles kicking ass always had a profound effect on me. And Williams' death was the first instance of me really rooting for a villain to get his comeuppance, and Han was a great, memorable supervillain. It was easy as a kid to understand that he was the bad guy. I was also introduced to John Saxton, and to give some context on the historical cultural makeup of Jamaica, it did not shock me to see white people or Asians on the island. Growing up, I was surrounded by different cultures and nationalities, so seeing an Asian, a black dude with a cool afro, and a lanky white guy work together was cool, but naively nondescript for me. And I guess my idea of how different cultures could work together to make the world a better place was formed from this movie. But fuck all that. This movie was about the action, the opening sparring session, the chase and fight sequence with Lee's sister, Williams' fight with the police. These are all seared into my brain. I think
The art of fighting without fighting
was the first time I saw a fighter beat someone with their brain, which made Bruce Lee even more of a badass. He can kick your ass, but he can make you look like an idiot without doing so? Maybe I did see the face of God at an early age. Then we get the actual tournament fights, the underground chase with nunchucks, the big brawl, and the final showdown between Lee and Han, and that entire mirror sequence I remember nearly shot for shot from when I first saw it. And those final two shots, the first of an impaled Han spinning with that heart music, and Han's bear claw over the superimposed the end credits? Man, as a kid, I was hooked, and this is a dragon I have literally been chasing all my life. And for me, no one matches Bruce Lee as a total action performer. He just seems like he was beamed down from another planet and was just taken from us way too early. But because of Enter the Dragon, I love action movies, specifically martial arts, which opened me up to Asian cinema of all kinds. This indirectly left the crumbs for me to discover the Seven Samurai and the awesomeness that is Akira Kurosawa. It also made me want to gobble up everything Jim Kelly, and that led me down the blaxploitation rabbit hole, with each new movie empowering me as a creative person of color. One final thing. As I've grown older, I've learned to appreciate John Saxon, as I've seen him in every fifth movie I've encountered from my life from every genre. And anything that has Bolo fucking Young in it is okay by me. Enter the Dragon popped my action movie cherry, and I've been paying top dollar for simulated violence ever since.
Bobby. Enter the Dragon. From Warner Brothers.
In 1975, he directed Jaws. In 1978, he directed Close Encounters of the Third Kind. In 1981, he directed Raiders of the Lost Ark. And now, Steven Spielberg brings us E.T., the Extraterrestrial.
Of all of the Essential Fives, honestly, this is probably the most important because without E.T. the Extraterrestrial, I would not be talking to you guys at all. I first saw this in 1982 at the mall with my parents, and I remember the huge cardboard display, and as a 4-year-old, it was absolutely overwhelming. Speaking of, this movie kicked my ass. It started silent with those purple credits, and then I was whisked away into a dark forest where light and shadow played with my expectations, and this 4-year-old immediately understood through visual storytelling that an alien was left behind on Earth and was being chased by people with guns. Yes, we are talking about the 1982 cut and not the week anniversary edition one that replaced the guns with walkie-talkies. I knew immediately this alien was in danger, and I wanted it to be safe. If you want to host a class of future filmmakers about show don't tell, screen the first 5 minutes in E.T. In that time frame, we got our inciting incident, one of our main protagonists, the main plot of the movie, and established the antagonist threat. So by the time Elliot meets E.T. as a child, I completely empathized with him. Everything about this movie is burned into my brain. A breadcrumb trail of Reese's Pieces, E.T. in the closet with toys, the first encounter with Drew Barrymore, the entire Halloween sequence, which truly captured what it was like to be a child of the 1980s, and of course the main set pieces, the moonlight flight, the afternoon chase with the authorities, which led to all the kids flying on their bikes, and that fake-out scene where we thought E.T. was a goner. And yeah, I cried like a bitch too. E.T. springing back to life, shown by those flowers growing back, was some ultimate catharsis. And that final scene where E.T. says his goodbyes with John Williams' triumphant score, that's one of the greatest bittersweet endings of all time. Not a dry eye in the house.
I'll be right here.
E.T. introduced me to Steven Spielberg, who I became obsessed with, and I did everything in my power to actively seek out any films that he participated in. E.T. was the first film that made me feel something and made me realize that cinema was much, much more than just telling stories for audience consumption, but movies were also art and could manipulate emotions like a symphony through their image and sound. I am a movie nerd. Because of E.T., I grew up consuming all movies, and it sort of made me a self-reflective critic and fan. I reference and recall old movies to provide context to my own reviews, similar to how Spielberg references old films, styles, and tropes to make his movies digestible and wide-reaching as possible. There was something also deeply personal about E.T. that spoke with me when it came to the issues of isolated youth and friendship. And this movie actually taught me to watch movies through the innocence of a child.
Somewhere between science and superstition, there is another world.
I love horror movies. I just do. I love horror movies of all kinds. But I do love horror that is a little bit more than just normal jump scares and is a little twisted. When I was growing up, every Friday night from Toronto, I would watch great movies on the channel where they would air a ton of blockbusters, and I discovered dozens of movies from that channel. By the time I was 6, my mom was pregnant with my younger sister, and I was a full-on movie addict. We lived in a high-rise in Toronto, and I would get into all sorts of hijinks, like taking a 10-bag pound of rice and going onto the elevator by myself, trying to help my parents unpack groceries. Yeah, I was a handful. But at this time, I caught a glimpse of a commercial that was going to play on late great movies, the more adult movie area. All I remember was seeing a little girl with devil eyes losing her goddamn mind. I grew up in a Pentecostal home. My parents are all about the Jesus. I went to Sunday school, doodling Optimus Prime's head over Noah's face, but this movie put the fear of God in me and made me believe that if I was not a good boy, the devil would go right up my ass, possess my body, and I would burn in hell for all eternity. Man, where do I even start? The opening. Because I was a dumb kid and didn't know anything about other languages, believed the movie sounded evil. The entire ordeal just felt off. So wait, how the fuck is a 6-year-old finding himself watching The Exorcist of all movies? Well, it was the 80s, and parent supervision was a lot more sus. But on top of that, I had a little mini black and white TV in my bedroom. The kind with the goddamn dials. Yeah, I lived in a time where TVs didn't have remote controls. We were savages. Anyway, City TV was one of the 3 stations I got. Now, the version I watched did not have the spider walk scene or was the version you've never seen, but this movie still fucked me up. The whole film was an event. Just the slow deterioration of this little girl, barely older than me, broke me. The Exorcist was the first movie I remember watching that had dirty language that sounded like my uncle's, and man, was that jarring. That whole final exorcism scene I can recall like yesterday, and honestly, I've always preferred the more deliberate jump cut that showed Father Karras' possession at the end of the exorcism, as opposed to the more smooth transition. I've always just felt that the cut fit the more jarring tone of the movie. And this shot, right here, talk about an image that can't be unseen. The Exorcist gave me the joy of being scared, but I also appreciated the story of this poor girl and her mother being sucked down the Hades rabbit hole, and I believe my appreciation for The Exorcist blossomed my adoration for films like Rosemary's Baby, The Witch, Possession, and The Babadook. Horror that were artfully made slow burns grounded in reality despite their fantastical elements. I also think that after one of my many rewatches of this movie was when I declared that the 1970s was my favorite decade in all film. Long live the new American wave.
Halloween night. A small American town. 15 years ago.
Michael?
Halloween.
Speaking of the new American wave and my love of horror, while The Exorcist scratches my art house movie itch when it comes to horror, it is John Carpenter's Halloween that makes me excited for a new Evil Dead movie or a new Friday the 13th film. I just love horror that is simple and entertaining, and John Carpenter's Halloween just scratches all of those itches for me. William Shatner's face on another person's face? Sign me up. Just like with The Exorcist, I caught this on City TV Late Great Movies. But I remember this being very special because I caught this the day after my 6th birthday, days away from Halloween itself. I had already formed a strong connection and identity to the notion of make-believe. I had a weird, macabre sensibility that even I admit was strange for a young child to have. I have always been fascinated with the idea of death, and Halloween seemed to encompass all of that. Candy. Lots and lots of candy. So trick-or-treating this year was going to be a little different. But back to the movie. This film is brilliant in its simplicity. Michael Myers murders his sister, is locked up, years later on Halloween escapes to wreak havoc on his old hometown, and the only one who may be able to stop this force of nature, this shape of evil, is his psychiatrist. Donald Pleasance is amazing as Dr. Loomis, who is the only one spitting facts about what Haddonfield is about to face. Jamie Lee Curtis brings the right amount of shy, small-town sensibilities with the heart of a fighter. The scene where Laurie Strode is trapped in the closet as Michael bursts his way inside gave me fits of existential dread as I saw that damn William Shatner mask in my nightmares. My love for slashers start here. John Carpenter is probably the only other filmmaker other than Spielberg whose movies I watch as frequently. But if I'm going to split hairs, I would say Carpenter may be my personal favorite filmmaker. There is something about his aesthetic, especially from during that golden period of his, from the films he made from Halloween to around In the Mouth of Madness. As a quick aside, I want to give a shout out to the dude that lived on the house on my block in Brampton who got dressed up as Michael Myers every Halloween and just stood there like a statue and dared us kids to get the candy bowl from right beside him while he would slowly raise his knife at all of us. Dude, you are fucking dedicated. Now, we just get animatronics from Spirit Halloween.
Halloween, the night he came home.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
The next chapter in the Star Wars saga, Return of the Jedi.
Look, there had to be a Star Wars movie on this list. George Lucas's magnum opus was released the year before I was born, so I was already saturated and inundated with everything Star Wars, and I knew everything about the property from the Kenner toys, and I had not even seen a Star Wars film yet. Well, that all changed in the summer of 1983. My Aunt Marissa, who is also my godmother, bless her, spoiled the fuck out of me. She gave me anything I wanted. I got my Atari 2600 from her, and a good chunk of my Transformers and G.I. Joe toys that I destroyed because I was a spoiled brat. The day I ripped the wrapping paper to reveal a brand new Nintendo NES on Christmas may be the single greatest natural high I ever felt as a young child. She loved me, and she knew I loved Star Wars, but I had never seen a Star Wars movie. So we, along with my uncle and my parents, went to the mall. It was always the mall by this point in the 80s to see the movie. Now, this is before the internet and pre-sales and all that stuff, so we had to 1, get to the mall early, and 2, wait. And lines would go out of the mall and around the building. And this was not just Star Wars. This was the conclusion of the Star Wars saga. I already knew Darth Vader was Luke Skywalker's father, but I really don't remember seeing The Empire Strikes Back. Return of the Jedi, though, I have such a clear memory of. It was like seeing the film a week ago. The entire fiasco was an event. Getting the tickets, getting the popcorn, finding our seats in a large but cramped theater. But when John Williams' score blasted, the Star Wars text just exploded from the screen, and that text crawl started, I was blown away, and my life has never been the same since. But we get to Tatooine and Jabba the Hutt's crib, and again, it was hilarious, because I don't remember watching The Empire Strikes Back, but I did know all about Han Solo being trapped in carbonite. So when Leia rescued him, I felt some catharsis. I also felt another kind of catharsis when Leia... Yeah, it's cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. Don't know how it would feel about being the cause for sexual awakening for a whole generation of people. But this was all about Star Wars, and we got all of that with Endor and that speeder bike chase, and oh my god, that lightsaber duel between Luke and Vader, while at the same time, it's a trap! Vader turning back to the light and sacrificing himself was the kind of finale that made my heart soar. Look, Return of the Jedi popped my Star Wars cherry, made me a sci-fi nerd, which is funny because this is honestly more of a space opera. But seeing the wonders of outer space always fascinated me, so I was always down for seeing how filmmakers would handle space. This helped me discover 2001: A Space Odyssey and Stanley Kubrick, which discovering him just... Oh, talk about opening up a whole new galaxy. This also pushed me to discover a little movie about an alien that explodes out of people. But back to Return of the Jedi. This movie rocked my face off.
Return of the Jedi, coming to a selected theater in your galaxy.
So those are my 5 essential films, and without those movies and the memories that formed around them, I would not be me. These movies opened my love and appreciation for cinema and helped me seek out other movies that only deepened my love of motion pictures even further. Do you have a set of essential films that formed your first memories of your filmmaking experience, or that shaped your own movie sensibilities? Share your thoughts, leave your comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you can get notifications as well. Thanks a lot, everybody. Peace.